Salem, Missouri. On the surface appears to be like any other small town in the United States. It has a church on almost every corner, but a closer look at these small towns will show a different story. Methamphetamine has taken over a lot of small town communities all over the United States. Meth is a dangerously addicting drug that has some deadly side effects as well as deadly ingredients. This drug has become an epidemic of sorts. In a study done by the Foundation for a Drug-Free World, in 2008, approximately 13 million people over the age of 12 have used meth. In 2007, 4.5% of high school seniors and 4.1% of 10th grade students reported using methamphetamine at least once in their life. This drug, as deadly as it is to the user of meth, it can also be very harmful to the communities and families of those who use it. Missouri held the title of meth capital of the United States for almost a decade. It wasn't until the last couple of years that that infamous title was given to Indiana. To put that into perspective, the Drug Enforcement Agency recorded 19,624 meth lab seizures in the last 10 years in Missouri alone. Missouri made up 14% of all meth incidents in the United States from 2004 to 2014. With that being said, first responders are at a very high risk for injury or exposure to the chemicals used to make methamphetamine. When combined and heated, these chemicals can create a hazardous atmosphere and pose a very high risk of fire and explosion. They can also create serious health hazards even from short-term exposures to the chemicals. Some meth cooks have even been known to booby-trap their labs, adding to the risk officers and first responders face when they make entry into a lab. Additionally, meth may cause users periods of high energy, rapid speech, delusions, hallucinations, paranoia, and violent behavior. Law enforcement officers and other first responders who encounter a person using meth are at risk because the drug affects the person's ability to make rational decisions, and as a result, the person may be more violent and harder to control. How many people on average are arrested due to meth per month?
This would vary. Most time it's we've got like 40% drug, but drugs and meth I can consider as one group, one big area.
Right. And then how many crimes do you believe are committed by someone under the influence of meth?
Well, there again, most of these people that I've got in custody are, if it's still in this drug related, it's either they're still in their grandparents' scripts or they're just like a stepping type of drug. They've got to still to get more drugs. Maybe.
And then how dangerous is a meth lab for first responders?
Well, there again, there's different stages in meth. I mean, when they're cooking it, they got to shake and bake. It's a pretty one-step process. But in the main process, the chemicals, the fumes and stuff, it's very serious because the officer has no idea what they're going on, what they're going into until they're actually inside. And
how have you seen meth negatively affect this community since you've become sheriff?
I've seen it with kids. It seems like the high school kids are worse and worse. I mean,
Property damage is a huge part of the negative effects meth can have on a community. It costs anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 to make a room habitable again after it being used as a meth lab. The cost to make a home habitable again can cost more than $100,000. That cost is usually paid by the property owner. That puts a large burden on the property owner. Missouri taxpayers paid $733.6 billion due to meth labs in 2011. Another type of property damage is something that can't be seen, the toxins. They are released by the drug that cling to the walls and carpets in homes and in hotel rooms. According to a study done by University of Nebraska Medical Center, 75% of the rooms in the hotels they looked at had traces of meth toxins. Besides the damage to homes and businesses, there is also a problem with meth waste. The waste from a meth lab can be anywhere from 5 to 7 pounds per pound of meth produced. That waste often gets dumped in ditches or in fields or even down sinks and toilets. The problem this poses is that if not disposed of properly, that waste can seep into the earth, put toxic chemicals into the groundwater, and if dumped into the sink or toilet, those toxins can enter our drinking water. That could be a huge problem because after extended exposure to those chemicals, you will become sick and could even die.
And how many times have you heard of a meth lab exploding? Seems like it's happened a lot lately.
It certainly has, and if anyone is hurt, it's usually the person cooking the meth, but sometimes there are innocent victims.
Fox 10 News reporter Charles Lombard tells you the story of one tiny survivor.
Too often, it is the most innocent of all that get hurt by meth: children. Children don't have any say in what their parents do and have no control over it. As of 2005, 12% of all children in Missouri state care were there due to a meth incident, whether it was both parents abusing meth or they were found in a meth lab. More than 15,000 children were found at meth labs between 2000 and 2005. That number is probably a lot higher today than it was 10 years ago. Children are the most impacted victims of meth. They can lose both their parents and sometimes even their own lives. Children of meth users have been allowed to live among the chemicals, needles, and other items used in the meth trade. Oftentimes, even taking baths in the same tub used to store the chemicals used to manufacture meth.
Not at all. The baby
Children are
was well
faced with a
taken
lot
care
of potential health and safety risks while living in a home that is used to produce meth or that has meth users in it. Some of those would be contaminated food and water, the inhalation of the chemical vapors, chemical burns, neglect, and even death in some cases. There was a case of parents giving their 4-month-old daughter meth to make her stop crying. That child was left brain dead and on life support. While not all parents give their children meth, the neglect alone causes significant damage. Another thing that the children are at a higher risk for is physical and sexual abuse by their own family members or another person in the home. Older children often act as caregivers for the incapacitated parents and are at a higher risk of doing meth than someone whose parents are not in the meth trade. Children can also be witnesses to the violence surrounding meth and sometimes even participating in the violence. There are a lot of ways meth can affect the person doing the drug, but there are far more victims than just the meth user. The community as a whole suffers from the members of that community using this drug. The businesses in the community suffer from the use of meth, people stealing the items off the shelves or robbing the store for money. Farmers suffer because people stealing the anhydrous ammonia in the tanks to make meth. The people of the community suffer because they have to pay more taxes to cover the cost of prevention and the cost of policing meth. The first responders can suffer because those on meth can be very violent and unpredictable, and often don't care if someone gets hurt. Hospitals suffer because more times than not, the injured meth user doesn't have insurance, so the hospital doesn't get paid. And worst of all, the children suffer because they lose out on their childhood, their health, and sometimes even their lives.